Welcome to the Gainz, where we talk about all things health and fitness. I'm your host, Leah Messenger. Let's get into it. Welcome to episode 1. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a rundown of what you can expect from this podcast. We're going to be joined by guests from all corners of the fitness industry to chat about their tips, tricks, fitness journeys, and careers. These guests will share their secrets to navigating fitness, nutrition, supplements, and mindset for you to get your gains. You can follow us on Instagram at Gainz Box or TikTok at Gainz Box, where you guys can keep up with us and submit guests or topics you want to hear on the pod. Today we're going to dive into how Gainz Box was born, but first I'll tell you guys a little bit about me so you can get to know me as your host. My name is Leah, and I'm a competitive bodybuilder and fitness fanatic. So I got serious about lifting during my freshman year of college, and I completely transformed my body and mind, and I haven't looked back since. I'm really big on mental toughness and mindset, which is something I think is super important in and out of fitness. I'm an NASM and PTAG certified personal trainer, and I'm just super passionate about health and fitness. But enough about me, let's get into today's episode. This podcast is brought to you by Gainz Box, the fittest subscription box. Gainz Box is a quarterly fitness subscription box that has apparel, supplements, and equipment created for the sport of fitness. Okay, guys, so I am sitting down with the creators of Gainz Box. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Brian Ellis.
Michelle Miller.
And Kenneth Miller.
Cool. So what is Gainz Box, and how did the idea for your business come about?
Yeah, so Gainz Box is a quarterly subscription box that we created to bring an entire experience to our subscribing athletes, from curated apparel, supplements, equipment, all from brands that they know of, as well as some brands that they don't know of that are in our community. So, more than just a subscription box, it's an experience that we wanted to create for our fellow athletes in our community.
That's great. So how did you guys come up with the idea for Gainz Box?
Over a lot of whiskey.
The three of us met at a CrossFit gym. And I actually met Michelle before I met Ken. Michelle was my CrossFit coach when I first started, so she was already kicking ass. And then after a couple of weeks, I was working out on a Saturday, and Ken was there. She was like, hey, work out with me and my husband. He's going to be here today. So then all three of us worked out at that point, and that's originally how we met.
Yeah. And after that, we just fostered our friendships for a while before the idea even came about. We were all working in our respective industries and professions within marketing. I was still an officer in the Marine Corps. Brian was still in sales. And, Michelle was, again, working marketing in the beauty sector. And then we were starting to get exposed to different subscription boxes just from our own passions and our own hobbies, until one night when we started talking about all the skill sets we have, and as well as the white space that existed specifically within the CrossFit community, where we knew all these awesome brands, and we saw how small, certain site.
Well, that's okay. Yeah. And then I for us, Gainz Box really started. I remember it was at a CrossFit competition, and Brian was sitting next to me, and we had just worked out, and we were talking about his clothing subscription, and he said, Why don't we do this for fitness? This has never been done in the CrossFit space, and I would love to get something mailed to my house.
Yeah, and then Michelle was like, there's so many of these beauty boxes that I deal with on a daily basis, so like it's something that we can bring to the fitness, to the fitness world. And then she was like, why don't you come over and talk to my husband about it? And then I think I went over there the next day with some whiskey, like Ken said, and we just started planning like literally every day from that day forward for like I think 6 or 7 months.
So did you guys originally want it to be more focused towards CrossFit or general fitness when you guys first started it?
It was definitely focused on CrossFit. I think fitness overall is such a huge umbrella of things, and when you have a business or a startup idea, it's good to focus. So starting within a space that we were all really familiar with at the time, we were competing, working out all the time. So it made sense to focus where we fit in at the, in CrossFit.
At the time, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think since then, Gainz Box has definitely evolved into overall functional fitness, just you know, it like fitness does, but it still has its roots in, you know, in CrossFit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was an interesting time too. I mean, around 2015, this is when CrossFit was nearing its peak. It was still growing. So, you know, in a space like that, you had a lot of big brands coming up. You had a lot of athletes achieving, you know, more or less celebrity status and starting their own brands as well. You had big brands getting into the space. So there was this unique opportunity where we put our skill sets together in this box to not just create a hodgepodge of items in a box to get sent to your doorsteps on a monthly basis at the time, but rather really look to the community and see, okay, who's the big players that are trying to make their way in? Where are the up and coming brands that need more exposure? Who are the athletes that want to help curate these boxes with us? And, you know, that's, I think, what was a big driver for our success is, you know, again, we weren't just throwing whatever we could get in there to make it look, you know, nice when it hit your doorstep, but really bring the community together from all these different avenues people were coming in from.
So how did you guys get started with bringing in these athletes and these products to Gainz Box?
I think a lot of them, the athletes came with the brands that we were working with, and we were like, well, originally it was, you know, our first month we sent boxes out to like local athletes, and we were just hoping that they'd post about it on Instagram. 'Cause back then.
Well, yeah, I think when we launched in 2015, we were able, at that time, you could launch a brand on Instagram, and we had very little startup, so we had like $5,000 or something tiny, and then what we did was we sent the box to, I think, 100 athletes, and they were all over, so it wasn't just local, it was, you know, and then we would get posts. This was before stories or before, you know, things disappeared, so we were getting all these feed posts from these huge influencers that had a ton of following, and at that time, like, I remember day one when we launched Gainz Box, we had, you know, I think like a ton of sales that first day.
Well, I mean, we capped it at 250, and we sold out that 250 like pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was nice. We started small.
So you guys were able to see like pretty big success from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Although you guys had such like a great success like from the beginning, what was your greatest fear with Gainz Box, and how were you able to manage that?
I think, you know, one of the biggest fears of the box is the product that goes inside. We're creating an experience from a bunch of different fitness brands to create one holistic experience. So if something doesn't come or if something gets stuck, that can be really scary. And I remember that, you know, when we first started, I think one of the brands had pulled out last minute, and for a second we thought like, okay, we're done.
That was a good run.
Yeah, just ended before it started.
You know, so we were able to at least make it through, and we got through that hump. But it also, you know, it made us put all these processes in place to not go through that again.
Yeah, I mean, the fears, I mean, they come in so many different forms and so many different phases. And if anyone's out there doing a startup now, or, you know, has, you know, started their own company in the past, know that your initial fear is like, is this even going to work? Am I giving up, you know, a good portion of my life or even my money to get something off the ground, and is it just going to fall flat immediately? And then when it doesn't fall flat, you know, you start asking yourself, okay, are we going to be able to sustain this for 6 months? Or am I going to be able to continue my professional job on the side that's paying the bills and keep this going to grow it? And then the next fear is, okay, if I quit my job, can we really see this through to where we can start paying bills? So, I mean, the fears, which is good, because I think fear is a great driver, you know, in anything that we do. The fears have, you know, they keep coming, and it keeps us on our toes. But I think starting off was, you know, as Michelle said, the making sure that, you know, we really deliver the experience to the subscribing athletes, and at the same time making sure that we deliver on all the marketing value to the brands that we're teaming up with as well. I mean, again, when we started this, it wasn't just to get boxes on doorsteps and make a few bucks doing it. It was to really provide value to the community, to the subscribing athletes, to the big brands trying to make it into the community, and to the small brands trying to make something in this community as well.
Mm-hmm. I think going back to like a lot of like new business owners, I think a lot of people's fear is like that they're gonna fail, and that they like don't want to quit their day job to like go after their dreams. So like, did you guys keep working at your other jobs while you were doing this, or did you kind of just go all in on it?
I did for probably 6 or 7 months, so that was really tough because I was doing loans, I was doing mortgages, so I would go to the office at 6 a.m. I would leave at 6 p.m. and then I would get together with Ken at our first warehouse, and we would work pretty late. And then that was sustainable for me for like 6 months, and then at that point I was like, I have to go all in.
You're like burnt out and tired.
Yeah. And I had to go all in order to make sure that we grew, or else it would have been like a part-time gig the entire time.
Yeah, and you can't just like do things half-heartedly. So if you're only doing it like after work, you're not giving like all of the energy that it deserves.
Right.
Yeah, not only from a time perspective. I mean, I was working for a small consulting firm, and my plan was, okay, I'll take on less clients. But even if I got down to one client, it's still just having to switch gears between, wearing two really different hats. And as Brian said, in order to see the success, you have to take the risk. No risk, no reward, right?
Exactly.
And I think we found ourselves at that kind of point of culmination about 5-6 months in, where I was like, okay, well, if I just have one client, I'm just going to work harder for one client during the day, as opposed to splitting that between 4 clients and then doing Gainz Box stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So we
it spreads you very thin if you're doing all of that.
Absolutely. And I think that's where self-sacrifice has to come in too. I mean, when we did switch over full time to Gainz Box, that didn't mean a full-time paycheck at all. We spent very little on ourselves as we were really getting the box up and running. I think we're pretty good about celebrating mistakes. Of course, there's some that you feel a little bit more than others. If we make a dumb financial move, or a certain brand just didn't work out right, or maybe we connected with an influencer,
a big bet on something.
But that aside, one thing that we're really good, here at the company is, we have a great structure and processes where we review our stuff. So, we create after action reports, and then we develop new processes to ensure we don't make similar mistakes. And that's something that obviously I've taken over from the Marine Corps. Yeah, so it's great. So I mean, for every mistake that happened, we became better for it. I think the only thing that would be regrettable is when we made mistakes twice when we should have learned from them. Which happens from time to time. But mistakes, I mean, they are inevitable. I think what's important is what you do after you make that mistake. Do you make the business better? And do you train yourself? Do you train your employees? Do you create a new process, or do you just hope it doesn't happen again? Because if you hope it doesn't happen again, that's the only real mistake that happens.
Exactly, I agree.
Yeah.
I think mistakes are really important to make, because then you can actually learn from them, and then what you do after the mistake and the way that you handle it, like, really defines you as a person or you as a business. It's like how you move forward with things.
Yeah.
So how did you guys develop the box? Like, what kind of products made the cut? How did you guys choose brands?
I think a lot goes into each box, or for sure a lot goes into each box. I think for each experience, what would you say? It's got to have a good balance, right?
I mean, Gainz Box has evolved from like not having specific themes to having themes, and then curators, and now on quarterly, like, we're more theme based even more. So like developing of the boxes, like when we have a curator, that person comes with a lot of brands and a lot of sponsorships and stuff, so like there's a lot of their brands in there. And then once we start getting some of the bigger items in the box, everything kind of falls into place with it. And I'll bounce stuff off Michelle, like, hey, we have this gym bag coming up, like, what would go well with a gym bag? And then that's kind of, how we put the boxes together, and what brands are hot at the time, who we're going after, or who's coming in the door to us at this point too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that's lent to that over the past few years as well is as we've gotten more recognition, within the CrossFit community, within the functional fitness community, and the overall, just general fitness community, we've had more brands approach us. And first couple of months, we were knocking on everyone's door with a really good-looking marketing deck, but not much credit behind us, which made curating and actually developing experiences for our athletes a bit harder from the get-go. But once we started getting that recognition, and we have just brands lining up, different athletes wanting to work with us, it's given us the opportunity to say, okay, well, as we're developing this, let's slot them out for next summer. So when that summer box does roll around, we have more time to get things in place and line everyone up so we can get the most value out of the relationships.
When did you guys start seeing brands coming to you rather than you going to brands?
I think that happened pretty quickly. I'd say that we went from, that first month when we started at 250, we went from 250 to thousands quickly. So that made brands come to us, when they saw the traction on social media or saw people posting about us, they wanted their products in the box. And that's still, so yeah, it still happens now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I have such a backlog of people that want in on the box. And it did happen quickly, like 6-7 months in. I think that we already had people knocking on the door. But like to get there was just like, it was very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, but that goes into, I think, the effort that we really, really poured into the box to create the value in the experience.
Yeah, at the time in the market, there was kind of these, not that great of versions of different experiences. I think there was something called the WAD box or something. It was like a bunch of samples. So we definitely wanted to make each box super thought out, kind of like how there weren't stores where you could buy CrossFit or functional fitness type items. So we wanted you to be able to get it in the mail.
Yeah, and then, on top of that, as we started rolling the boxes out and delivering on the marketing value we wanted for the brands, word got around quick. It's rather than just, buying things at wholesale and just putting them in the box and not really speaking to the brands. As we started getting relationships with some of these bigger names out there, they saw the effort that we put into the media shoots and our decks, and how the decks weren't just for what we needed for our ads and what we needed for our creative, but what we were going to get and bring back to them. And they would see the different recap reports we'd get for them and all the survey data we'd pull from our subscribers, not only for our own use to figure out how to make a better experience for our athletes, but to give back to the brands. I mean, there's been times where we've kind of gone in with a smile to a company, I'm not going to name any names, when they rolled the product out with us and say, hey, the feedback, people didn't like it, but here's why they didn't like it, and here's what we extracted from that as well. And sometimes, going back to what we spoke about, learning from mistakes, sometimes there's more value in that.
I think you guys provide a lot of value to brands because you give that feedback, and then you provide a lot of value to the consumer because you're giving them full-size products. You're trying to create this experience, and you're trying to give them value in every little aspect of like their fitness journey, I guess.
Yeah.
What advice would you guys give to someone that wants to start a business in fitness?
I would say focus is really important. Fitness is a huge bubble and huge industry. So focusing on what you want to do to bring something different and better.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a space now, especially with digital e-commerce and how many different services out there that can white label things for you. Or, I mean, we used to call them lemonade stands, where anyone can make a pre-workout or a clothing brand, this and this, find two rhyming words that has, something that have to do with fitness in there. And you got a brand. So the only ones that actually stick around are those who, really decide, as Michelle said, focus on what you actually want to contribute to the community. Because, what's great about platforms like TikTok now, authenticity is the only thing that's going to get you through.
Exactly.
If you take a shortcut and you just want to white label something, that means anyone else could white label it, and that means anyone else can compete with you, and there's no longevity in that.
No, not at all.
And who wants that anyways? Who wants to do something that the person next to you can do with a few clicks?
Exactly.
And, for me, being on the brand partner side is just garnishing relationships, and like the fitness community is big, but it's also small in the same respect, whereas like these big companies all talk, they all work together. So when I meet a CEO of a company and I get face-to-face time with them, that goes a very long way. Even if no deal was made, like that goes a long way in terms of making a future deal, or if they even refer us to somebody else, that can definitely be part of Gainz Box. So I think those personal relationships has been like super helpful.
Yeah, I think relationships are super important. Something I always have heard is it's not like what you know, it's who you know. And I think building relationships with people always pays off in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to authenticity of brands, I think TikTok is the new Instagram, of like what Instagram used to be, where you could start a business and everything was a lot more organic, and it was easier to launch a business, easier to grow. The algorithm wasn't as complicated. So now TikTok is taking over and creating these opportunities for these brands. But what differences, if any, did you guys see when the fitness world started getting a lot more saturated? Because, like, as you said, there's a ton of fitness brands now, white labeling, and influencers. Like, what differences did you guys see with, like, all that saturation?
I think, if anything, there's a lot more products and brands with influencers. I mean, I know that's what you said, there's more brands. So I think now influencers have brands.
Has it benefited Gainz Box, or do you think it's made it a little harder with all the saturation?
I think we've had to reinvent ourselves. Like, long are the days where we're going to send a box to somebody, they're going to do a feed post, and we're going to see sales. So, like, it's become more about, not that it wasn't before, but, like, the product's super important. Customer service is super important. Getting new influencers out boxes as well, not just the same old ones.
Brand recognition, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, going back to experience as well. Going to what you said about Instagram, you see the saturation over the years to the point where it's gotten so busy. It's hard to pick out any single thing in your feed now, because you're getting bombarded with all these influencers making their own brands, all these brands making more product lines, to the point where the only authentic thing you're going to see is when you go on TikTok. But I mean, I think that speaks to something a lot bigger. TikTok is not complicated right now, and it's not saturated with a ton of ads and algorithms. And Facebook, Instagram wasn't in 2015. So in 2025, there's going to be something new, but the principle is going to remain the same. When a platform comes out to where only authenticity can come through, and only focus, and only something that's genuine, and not just made in a rush to sell in a rush, that's what's always going to win, right? And so it's what's winning on TikTok now, and it's gonna be what wins in the next platform in 2025. It's the authentic brands that are there to serve a purpose, not just to make money.
Exactly. And we see social media like changing every day, like it's evolving, and like Brian said, like you guys have had to reinvent yourselves already. Where do you guys see yourselves in the next year with Gainz Box?
So, we've evolved a lot over the past years, as Brian said, reinventing ourselves and adapting and staying flexible to the market as we grow. And that's how we came to, creating the quarterly box and switching all of our subscribers over there to give them, pretty much what they pay over 3 months on the monthly box into a much more premium box and a quarterly box, providing even more value. We're getting a lot of feedback, some good, some bad, and we're going to keep adjusting, and we're going to keep creating and putting as much effort as we can into making sure the experience that we bring to our athletes and the experience that we bring to the brands that we work with is the best we can. And that's going to come in the form of the quarterly box, a lot of the special one-off boxes we've done for different holidays, other special curated boxes, and some more exciting things in the coming quarters.
Cool. I'm excited to see where Gainz Box goes in the next year. To kind of wrap this up, what is your guys' favorite part about running Gainz Box?
For me, it's definitely the culture that we've built. I think whenever I come in, there's an underlying community here, so I really like that.
For me, it's just been just kind of what I do on the day to day is just meeting people that are like-minded. I've made a ton of friends through this industry, and it's always good to hear their stories and become friends with them beyond just Gainz Box and stuff. So just that personal networking has been great.
Yeah, I think what I've really liked seeing over the years, and what I've really enjoyed the most is, as Brian says, this is it's a big world, but it's a small community. Especially on the business side of the section of the market that we're in. With CrossFit and kind of the roots in that, there's been a lot of military give back and a lot of foundations we worked with. So between connecting with a lot of the adaptive athletes, the veteran athletes, doing different challenges and working with different groups and companies, it's been really fulfilling. You're listening to the first episode, but hopefully as you look down this playlist, you see all the other things that we have lined up for this right now, between the different companies we're going to be talking to, the different athletes, the different brands, and all the other cool stuff that we have in the queue. So stay tuned. We got some cool stuff, and hopefully you enjoy it.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for coming on and being our first guests. And yeah, I'm so excited to see what this podcast turns into. It was really great having you guys on.
Okay.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of The Gainz. Join us weekly for new episodes and special guests. Make sure to head over to thegainzbox.com or Gainz Box on Instagram to get yourself a Gainz Box today.